So the title of this video is obviously clickbait. Europe is not poor. If you go to countries that even are not that rich in Europe, like Portugal or Poland or Greece, what you're going to find is there's still quite a bit of social cohesion. They're still relatively safe. The minimum wage is high by international standards, and they actually boast a very good quality of life. And obviously, if you go to the most well-off European countries, so think Denmark, or the Netherlands or Switzerland, then you're actually in some of the richest, most prosperous countries that have ever existed. So, what do I mean by why is Europe so poor? What I actually mean by it is why has it been stagnating, and why, when compared to other Western countries, have so many European countries gradually been getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. As many of you may know, if you compare Europe and America, and by Europe I mean the Eurozone and America, in around 2007 to 2009, they had about the same GDP, and in the last 15 to 18 years, the US pretty much it went from having more or less of an equal GDP to having a GDP that's actually 50% higher than Europe, and that's without a massive population growth or anything. So pretty much what happened is the US got richer and Europe really stagnated. And obviously, Europe had a really, really hard time in between like 2011 and 2015. As a whole, the continent did struggle a little bit. And obviously, with Brexit, that was a bit of a mess. In 2021 or 22, with the war in Ukraine, that got worse as well. So Europe has been having a bit of a hard time. Fertility rates are really low, and especially big European countries, they do seem to be kind of a mess. If you go to Germany, if you go to France, if you go to Italy, if you go to the UK, even though it's left the EU, obviously, those four countries, they really are struggling, and they haven't really shown noticeable growth in the last 10 to 15 years. Now, Italy is definitely out of those four, probably the most problematic. The UK is probably second, and then Germany and France, they each have a bit of like positive signs in between them, but none of those countries are doing great. And obviously, part of the trouble with comparing countries is that whenever countries use different currencies, differences in currency rates actually affect how you see the countries. So it could be that a country in its own national currency has been growing, but in USD or in international dollars, it's been lagging behind because its currency, for example, the euro, has been falling. So it is possible, but it's still generally true that America, and not just America, by the way, but Australia, Canada, most of the Anglosphere, and also some other countries in Asia, like Singapore or the UAE, for example, they have been sort of. Europe has been sort of lagging behind. They have been really advancing, and Europe has just not been able to catch up, really. Now, there are still some excellent countries in Europe. Switzerland is one that I like to mention because I think Switzerland is really well run. It's been steadily developing, and they definitely like stability. So they're just slowly growing, and that's something I really respect. There are also some other countries in Europe that, even though I do question their social models and their efficacy, they have like such low levels of corruption, and they have such a interesting social model, to say the least, and they're very well run. So, for example, Denmark or Norway or Sweden, the Nordic countries in general, Ireland would definitely be one of them. The Netherlands would definitely be one of them. Those are all countries that they have sort of been able to pull through, and they have shown growth, and they have overall at least maintained their proportional quality of life in compared to other Western countries. But even them, like even those countries I just mentioned, they're still sort of lagging behind, at least the United States, at least. And at least by that I mean economic growth, obviously, and the average wealth that like a median person has. And the problem with that is all those countries are really small. So when you compare Europe overall, the main countries, the big countries, the countries with big populations, they represent most of how Europe is doing. So obviously, if you compare Italy, France, Germany, and Spain, they have like, I don't know, 60, 70% of the population in Europe. Don't quote me on that, but at least in the EU, they're definitely one of the biggest remainders, one of the biggest parts in the continent, and they have been really, really struggling. The average Italian wage pretty much hasn't changed in the last 20 to 25 years. Germany hasn't I believe its economy is actually smaller than it was before the pandemic. It's having a very serious energy crisis. France has some more internal issues, I'd say. Like France actually has a pretty solid energy system. Somehow it's managed to keep growing, even though it has a huge bureaucracy. I mean, I'm talking like French bureaucracy is truly, truly scary. But there are some indications, and can quote this and put an image here if I'm not too lazy when I'm editing this video. But if current rates continue, then Europe will have as large of a gap with the US in 2035 as it has with India today. So obviously, the average European, they go to India, they think, shit, I'm lucky back home. Like it's very clear that Europeans, on a sheer material wealth perspective, they're much better than India. And in just 10 years, 2035 is like right there. It's right here. It's gonna come. The difference between the US and Europe might be just as large, in the sense that Americans might go to Europe, and obviously Europe will still have beautiful ruins and beautiful monuments and history and all that, but they're going to see how the average European lives, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, like that's nice, but it's not like back home. And it's already sort of the case. I travel a lot, and the way Americans travel, it's so different to the way that Europeans travel, because they're normally on less of a budget. Things are more affordable for them. They just make more money, and that's just the fact when you look at statistics. So if I'm talking to an European, 2,500 euros a month is a good wage. But if I'm talking to an American, then $30,000 a year is a shitty wage, and you'd have to make double that or triple that to actually be talking. And the reason for that partially is because the US is more expensive, obviously. But part of it is just that Americans are making so much more money, where it's not even that uncommon anymore. Not that it's common, but it's not even that uncommon anymore for you to have a six-figure salary in America. And for you to have a six-figure salary in Europe, outside of Switzerland, it's pretty much crazy, especially because so much of it will actually go to the government, because taxes are so high that you'd probably be having to make almost double that to actually have 100K net per year in your account. And it's hard to give a solution, because the solution for Europe would be to abandon some of the things that made Europe in the first place. Because like Europe has, in the last 50 to 100 years, been the place for progressive taxation, and for high taxation overall, by the way, and for social services. But the thing is, that slows down, and you can live off that for a while. Like if you get rich, you can become a big welfare state for a while, but you can't do that forever. And I'm not saying Europe should or should not dismantle its healthcare system, or start charging students exorbitant prices for education like America does. But I am saying that if Europe doesn't catch up, especially on the regulatory and bureaucracy side, it is not going to be nearly as relevant as it has been in the future. Because the fact is that all big companies, all startups, anyone with any hope of innovation, of creating jobs, moves from Europe to the US, or if not to the US, to Dubai, to Singapore, and wherever, because it has become just a burden. And that is really, really dangerous, because when you become a burden, it takes a while. Not everyone leaves immediately. There are emotional connections. There's just overall commodity. There's ease of just staying where you are. But overall, in the long run, less business will open, less people will move there. The people who move there might be different as well, because I'll tell you this, few people move to America expecting a big payout from the government. You could be against illegal immigration and all that, but I'm going to tell you, illegal immigrants in America, they work hard. Like, they're really, really hard working. Illegal immigrants in Europe, especially if they're illegal, with probability, or if they're refugees, or if they're there, like, sort of in a weird way, probably they're going to have a handout. It's so much higher. And so if Europe doesn't change that, I don't see it going good places. And I say that as an European citizen who's lived in 3 of the countries I mentioned. I've lived in the UK, I've lived in France, though to be fair, I didn't live in France for that long, and I've lived in Italy as well. And like, Europe is amazing. Like, Europe is like just on a sheer like beauty, Europe is like the best place in the world. It's beautiful. It's got history. The people are nice. I love Europeans, and it's nice to move around. And I've talked about the perks of being an EU citizen overall, and I still think that the EU is overall a positive thing. I think that freedom of movement and that the freedom of trade that has arisen, that arose from the EU is amazing. It's great, but it came with a big price. It came with a lot of strings attached, and maybe some of those strings should be cut. Honestly, maybe some of those strings should be cut. So I'm gonna leave it as it is, and I want to hear you guys in the comments below. Do you still prefer Europe? Are you thinking of moving? Are you thinking of maybe moving from Europe to Singapore or Dubai or America or Canada or Australia or Brazil or Argentina or whatever? Or are you thinking of moving within Europe and maybe going to one of the countries I said are still really good, like let's say Switzerland or Denmark, for example? Or are you moving to Eastern Europe where taxes are lower and culture is a little bit more traditional, let's say? So I'd love to see what you guys think, and I'll see you guys around.